Hey guys, Micah from Black Bear Custom Kydex. I've got a sheath to show you here today. This is a Kukri sheath, and the knife here, I had never actually seen one of these until the customer contacted me. This is just a Kukri from Todd Begg, I'm sorry. Knife maker. Interesting design. It's very comfortable in hand, and the balance on this is phenomenal. This thing, I can tell, even though it's not a huge blade, would be a really, really good chopper. So I apologize. I don't know what the steel is. Tom is my customer. Tom, can you comment down below? Let us all know any other information about this knife in case anybody else is interested in this. All right, so Tom asked me if I could make him a sheath for it on a Dangler, and he'd sent me a picture of another project that I'd done. If you guys, for those of you who are interested and want to go look it up, I'll put the video link in the description box below. But it was for a piggyback system with a PKS Grizzly and an Escobar from K-Bar SE collaboration. So I'd done a leather wrap over the Kydex, which is what he was looking for, the color combo. So leather bonded to Kydex, and I gave the leather a distressed look per that customer's request. And so I've done that again here. You can see the leather has kind of wrinkled and worn look to it. That helps it just to look a little more broken in and aged. But the leather here is brand new. It's very durable. It's very strong. It's just an aesthetic thing. And how I achieved this was basically you want to get your leather a little bit wet when you still have just, before bonding it to your Kydex. You want to get a sheet of leather, cut it to the size that you need, and then just do what's called casing the leather, which is where you take a sponge or a washcloth and you lightly dampen the finished side of the leather, the side that you're going to see. And then all you have to do, really, you can do anything that you want to it to give it the impression of damage or wear. But what I do is I usually just kind of wrap it up like I'm wringing it out. I'll give it a lot of twists. I'll do creasing all over it, just fold it and mash it and stretch it and pull it. And it just gives all these little lines and pressure marks and whatnot. And then after I bonded it to the Kydex, in this particular case, I felt that it still didn't look as worn as I wanted it to. So just using my fingertips with a glove on, and I just kind of scratched in random patterns and kind of gave it more pressure marks and whatnot. So that's why it looks really good and worn in. So I hope this is to your liking, Tom. I think it looks nice. It feels really nice, and the leather came out just really well. So both the Dangler and the sheath itself are Herman Oak full grain vegetable tan leather. I've dyed both of them with mahogany, a mixture of mahogany and light brown dye, and I have done black edge coat to the edges of them, so you can see this really nice kind of smooth sheen all along the edges. That's a product called Edge Coat. It places kind of like it rolls on like a thicker kind of paint, and there's a special tool that you can apply it with that it's got a tapered head that rolls. So you dip it and then you kind of just roll it really carefully along the edge, and you can give it a real precision application. So you see those very, very straight lines along the edge there. And as it hardens, as it dries, it creates a little bit of an enamel and sinks into the material just a little bit. So it's a really cool effect. I love Edge Coat, and it also does a good job at helping to kind of blend the leather and the Kydex, because there is a visible edge to where the leather ends and where the Kydex begins. And I do try to always get that as seamless as possible by sanding it down together. But sometimes, depending on what color of the Kydex and what color of the leather, you can see more or less of that kind of transition. This hides it about as best as you're ever going to hide it. So it's a cool effect. I really am a big fan, and I think it looks really nice. The other color in this is black, more specifically whip. So this is a leather textured Kydex called True Hide. You can see that kind of embossed texture on there. It looks a bit like rawhide. And with this, there are, I think, 3 different color variations. There's whip, which is black, whiskey, which is a kind of a medium brown, and then tequila, which is a light, it's like a tan. So this is whip, True Hide whip. I really love the look, especially of True Hide whip with actual leather. I just think that's such a nice aesthetic. So now looking at the knife itself, you can tell by the shape of the handle that this is going to be problematic because there's no swell at the front of the handle right before the blade, which is necessary for click retention. So you guys typically would see on most knives, you'll see if I have something. All right, this is the only other ones in arm's reach. But you can see that there's a swell here. And this is something that I can mold the Kydex in behind so that as you put the knife into the sheath, it has to kind of pass through a retention point and click into place. That also then prevents it from falling out. So you then have to pass that retention point again to release the knife from the grip of the sheath. In this case, there is literally no contour. There's nothing to grip onto here. So it becomes a little bit more challenging and you got to come up with some kind of solution. So the first thing that I thought of was, if I added some kind of spacer right below the blade when I form the sheath, that would create a gap, and then I could pinch that gap using some kind of screw. So just using a Chicago screw, you can see this snap is set up there. Try to ignore that for a second. If you look in between there in that gap, there's a rubber spacer. You can actually tighten this screw down or loosen it up to increase or decrease the retention on the blade. How it's retaining it is just a little bit of a friction hold. So it literally just pinches the mouth of the sheath more or less. And there actually is a point where if you pinch it too much, it flares out the top and you lose retention. So you kind of got to find somewhere in the range of the sweet spot. But the snap might even be, the screw here might even be a little bit of a moot point because I decided that it would be probably prudent to add an optional snap strap for retention. So essentially by doing this, you can see you bring this strap over, snap it shut, and it just kind of pinches the top together here. That also gives less space for the blade to escape, so it's just kind of doing the same thing, locking it in place. So you don't get a click with this particular knife. And how you want to put it in too, because of I'll explain the shape of the sheath, how I designed that, but how you want to put it in is basically go with the angle that you see here and then turn it as you go in. You can definitely go straight in and the sheath will kind of guide it, but if you want the smoothest draw and resheathing, that's my recommendation right there. You could also go straight in like this. So this spine of the knife here, well, the swedge rather, the swedge is aligned with the spine of the sheath. So you could just go straight in like that and it'll work pretty well. So then you just want to stretch this snap over the top, force it down, and with that snap on there, you can still hear it rattle just a little bit if you really shake it, but it's not going to fall out on you. So I do think the snap is a solid addition to the sheath. This is not a feature that he asked for, but I told him about it and he said that's fine. He appreciates me adding that as a potential option. And if I were carrying it, to be totally honest with you, it's not a necessary feature because you're carrying the sheath from the Dangler and the knife isn't just going to fall out on you. So you'd have to upend the sheath anyway and shake it for it to fall out. But so it's not even upside down. It doesn't fall out until you give it a jostle and then it'll come out. So carrying it around like this without the strap, you could absolutely do that. And barring, a big fall down a hill or something, I don't anticipate that you'd lose your knife out of the sheath. But with that strap on there, you do have a lot more security. The strap itself, if you look on this side, I added multiple holes. Right now it's in its tightest configuration. However, you can loosen it up and do it through different holes. Now, if you go down to the next hole, you're going to find that if your strap is over this portion of the spine of the sheath, you're not going to have any retention because it's loose. So you got to go up to here. So you can rotate this strap up to this portion through the second hole. The third hole, you might not actually even get sufficient retention at all. I think I had added it on there as with the idea in mind that you'd have adjustable retention with the strap itself. But I really think the two viable options are the first and the second hole. The first one, of course, is the tightest, and it is the hardest to get to snap shut. So how I recommend you do it, because I don't think you're going to be able to do this one-handed, to be totally honest. Well, let's see. See if I can hold this down and kind of, yeah, you might be able to. I'm almost there. Yeah, there we go. I got it. It'll stretch over time just enough to work out. This is rubber coated nylon, so it doesn't stretch much. It's very, very rugged stuff. But you should be able to do that one-handed, maybe with a little bit of practice, and over time as that strap loosens up just a little. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got to show you guys. It's not a particularly complex sheath, but it's a really cool one. I think it looks really nice, and the Kukri itself is a really unique blade here. I'd never seen any of Todd Begg's work before, much less something off the beaten path. Kukris, while they are obviously well known now, are still not representative of a huge percentage of all the knives that you might take out into the wilderness. So I really like them. I think they're cool, unique, very functional, versatile knives. Let me know what you guys think down below of the distressed leather, of the leather in general, this color combo. Let me know what you think of this Todd Begg Kukri. What else do you know from Todd Begg? Do you like his knives? Give me some thoughts down below. The one other thing I wanted to say, actually, so this plate, the reason I decided to go with the plate as the attach point for the Dangler system was because knowing that the blade is in there a little bit strange. Actually, I guess I got to talk about that too, but because of the angle that the blade is seated into the sheath, I wanted to make sure that you would have some options as far as how you're going to connect the knife. So you can connect through these two holes into the plate, which are also the same exact width as these two holes. So you can move this apparatus over and it'll hang obviously a little more canted that way. And you can also go through the first and third hole if you rotate this around this way and go through these corners. So you do have a little bit of a play in terms of the options. And of course, if you wanted to, you could take the plate off and poke some holes in it to get additional options. So you got a lot of different ways that you can make this Dangler work on there. This just is the way that I would personally carry it. Seems to balance really well. I like this. Real quick with the Kukri. So the most common thing that you're going to see for Kukri sheaths, whether it be leather or Kydex, is that the knife will go into the sheath. Let's just pretend this piece of paper is a sheath. You see it at a relatively normal angle as far as the handle in relation to the spine of the sheath. So you'll have the straight part of the handle going there, and then all of a sudden the knife kind of drops off there at an angle. And what most Kydex makers will do, they'll put it in a little bit lower like this. And then after the sheath is formed, they'll put eyelets across the spine of the knife on the angle, and then they'll just trim this section of the spine completely off. Now what that does is it gives you the more traditional appearance of a sheath, and you don't have to worry about any of the blocking. So by blocking I mean, if you look at it from this angle, if I were to form the sheath like I just described without cutting the spine, I would have to fill in all this space down here so that the fattest part of the blade could draw through there. So you have to create this channel, open it up. With the sort of split spine design that you see on a lot of larger knives, Kukris, Parangs, the Elchete, things like that, a lot of guys will just cut this section of the spine off altogether so that when you draw your knife, instead of just kind of drawing out this way, you'd actually kind of lift it up out of the sheath and draw like that. The reason I don't build that design is because it's weak. I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying that you couldn't get a lot of good use out of it. I'm not saying don't buy that design. I'm saying it is empirically a weaker sheath because this rounded dome on the spine adds a lot of reinforcement. It adds a lot of strength to the overall structure of the sheath. And if I were to cut this open, you would lose a lot of that. It would become more like two pieces than one piece. and you could very easily flex these two pieces against one another, which means they're not going to protect your knife quite as well. Again, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's something that you're going to lose out on if you go with that, but I personally don't like it. I personally like having my sheaths to be really rigid and rugged, and I just think it's worth the time to block out the blade however is necessary to make it work. So as you look at this one, because I choose to do it like this, number one, there is a recurve on the blade, so I have to fill in some of this space down here in that recurve to make sure that that's not an issue. The biggest issue, however, is making sure that the spine right here directly transitioning onto the blade from the handle, make sure that that's blocked out, because I know that the bottom of the blade still has to pass through a channel this way. So this is what I'm going for as far as the draw. Even though it's not in line with this part of the handle, I think it still makes the most sense as a user and as you're carrying it in a dangler position. So for that, it's actually a really easy trick for that. I just took a piece of craft wood and kind of traced like I basically laid a piece of craft wood out with the spine of the wood in line with the knife here, and then I drew the triangle onto it that I needed, and that's that. So you can see how that nicely aligns all the way across that long spine there. And then it wasn't quite fat enough, so I just added a couple thin pieces of Kydex to it just to make sure that after forming it, it would be as wide as the widest point of the blade. That way there wouldn't be any hot spots or hang-ups or anything. So it's a cool little trick, and it works really nicely to get a good mold on odd-shaped knives. So, all right, guys, that's all I got for you. I know this was a lot longer than I intended it to be, but thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you like this sheath and this knife. Definitely comment down below. Give me your opinions. And, of course, I appreciate you tuning in for this video and for the next one. See you soon, guys. God bless.